Hey buddies, my name is Casey Hanalei. I'm a portrait artist from Las Vegas, and I thought it'd be fun to do this series called A Brush with Death, a series where I sit down, I videotape myself telling you a true crime story, and me painting a portrait that has something to do with the case. So I thought that would be a lot of fun, and people might like it. If you do, or if you don't, let me know down below, and let's get started with today's case. Actually, before we get started, a few disclaimers. I cannot paint and talk at the same time, not coherently. So it's like those people that can sing and play the piano at the same time. Oh my God, this is what I do for getting grunge makeup. Okay, you guys will let me know if I get more. Okay. Anyways, it's like people who can play piano and sing at the same time. My sister can do that, and I have no idea how she can do it. So I'll be trying to do a split screen, so hopefully this is split and you'll be able to see what I'm painting over here. And then before I do that, I wanted you to say hi to Jimmy. Jimmy is behind us and he's joining us today. Say hi to Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy. Jimmy Hendrix is a portrait I painted a year or two ago, and he has something kind of do with the case today, so I thought it would be fun to have him join us today. And then hopefully, if this series go well, I'll be able to have one of my nice baby pieces back behind me so you guys can see some more of my art. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so today's story, I got my grunge makeup on, and maybe from the title of this video, you could probably tell who we're going to talk about today. Oh my God, I still got lipstick on. Guys, this purple is killing me. Okay. Sorry. Kurt Cobain. We're talking about Kurt Cobain today. So he died in 1994, and that was a few years after I was born. And so growing up, all I knew about Kurt Cobain was Nirvana and that he supposedly committed suicide. But as I got older, I got into true crime like one does. And I started looking into this case, guys, and just all of the evidence and the timelines and the alibis and the botched police job on this. Like, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure if he committed suicide or not. And I'm sorry, disclaimer before we get into this video, there are mentions of suicide. There's talks about Kurt's death and suicidal ideations and all that kind of stuff. So please, if you're not ready for that today, I totally understand. I love you. I'll see you next time. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I don't think he did it, guys. That's just my opinion, obviously, and I'm gonna restate that every now and again through this video. It is my opinion. Don't come after me, but and I'm not the only one out there. And we can talk about that. We can talk about all of it. Let's talk about it all, guys. So what I want to do is I want to do like kind of a timeline of his life, and then we can kind of get into what went wrong during the investigation and all that kind of stuff. So let's get started. Okay, so early childhood. Kurt was born, Kurt Donald Cobain, that's adorable, in 1967. In Aberdeen, Washington, and I've never been to Washington, so shout out to all my Washington peeps. Maybe I'll come visit soon. Heard it's beautiful. Anyway, he was born in 1967. He had a younger sister, Kim, and by all accounts, it seemed like he had a happy childhood. He, was a fun, loving kid, and he was said to be very kind and sweet. That was until he turned 9 and his mom and dad sadly divorced. So that's hard on anyone, and especially because they actually split up the kids too. So Kurt went to go live with his father in a neighboring city to Aberdeen, Washington, and then his younger sister Kim went to go live with his mother. And so, as you can imagine, that's probably really difficult for a 9-year-old to be going through. And that kind of started his like angsty persona, right? I don't want to say persona because that's, it's not a mask he's wearing. This is like actually what he's living. So, anyways, so he eventually went to go back to live with his mother, and he was going to high school and stuff. And that's when he started to get into drugs and drinking. And that was in the early 1980s. And so before I get into this next part, I just want to say, like, everyone said that Kurt was like musically and artistically talented from like the get-go. He loved instruments and he loved art. Same. Stupid. He loved to draw, and you guys should definitely check out his art. It's, how would I describe it? It's very Dali-esque. If you don't know who Dali is, please go look it up. But it's Dali, but it's like creepier. There's like scary monsters, and there's lots of like scary imagery and stuff, but it's really rad. I think it's rad. So go check it out. Actually, one of his ex-girlfriends owns a lot of his artwork, so she has a big collection of it, and you can get prints and everything of it. So please go get some Kurt Cobain art. Anyways, so he went to go back to live with his mother, and that's when he started going to high school, and he started hanging out with all the outcasts, and immediately became like the spokesperson of the outcasts, which he never wanted to be. And this is kind of a theme throughout his life, is they keep like, oh, he's the voice of a generation. He's like, no, I don't want to be, like, stop, guys. And they just keep pushing him. Anyways, so he was like that in high school too. Everyone flocked to him and wanted to be his friend. He was just a really kind person. And anyways, so when he was in high school, he actually dropped out, and his mom told him, hey, like, you got to get a job or I'm going to kick you out of the house. And he's only 16 years old. And so Kurt doesn't get a job. So she kicks him out, and he's couch surfing for a while, living with friends. And then eventually he starts to live under this bridge in Aberdeen. And it's a pretty famous part of his life that people reflect back to. Actually, the song Something in the Way is inspired by this time in Kurt's life. The first line is literally underneath the bridge, which is, come on. Like, that's this time, right? He's 16 years old, living under a bridge. And the cool thing I saw and I found was the city of Aberdeen in 2011 actually commissioned this huge 13-foot electric guitar statue in Kurt's name by that bridge. And then in 2015, they dedicated the Kurt Cobain Memorial Park there in Aberdeen, right where that bridge is. And there's still like graffiti and stuff under that bridge, dedicated to Kurt. And so it's just kind of crazy to think about, 16-year-old Kurt, inspired all of this to happen, right? The statue and the park and all these people coming to paint graffiti and dedicate this stuff to Kurt. And, rewind back to Kurt being 16 years old, living under this bridge by himself. Like, that's pretty crazy. That's just like who Kurt was, though. He's just an inspirational person. So around 1984 and 1985, he starts to get into what's called the sludge rock scene. Soon to be grunge, but it's sludge rock. And he discovers the Melvins. And the Melvins, the band, were famous in their own right, but one of the members, Buzz Osborne, befriended Kurt and introduced him to this world of sludge rock, soon to be grunge rock. And he started to really get into that scene and really want to start a band. And so him and Buzz Osborne actually started their first band, and put out a few singles and stuff, and did a lot of covers of Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, and I think the Ramones, which sounds really rad, but do you want to guess what the name of their band was? Just take a guess. It's Fecal Matter. Fecal Matter is the name of their band that covers Jimi Hendrix, the Ramones, and who else did I say? Led Zeppelin. Bowel Movement was taken. That would have been better. I feel like Fecal Matter. I'm sorry, Kurt. It's such in Kurt fashion, though. I feel like he just like doesn't give a crap. Literally, no pun intended. I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on. So, Fecal Matter never took off. Shocking. Never took off. So later in 1985, Kurt created like a mixtape. You guys remember mixtapes, right? Like, he created this mixtape, and the local bassist, Krist Novoselic. Oh, I said it right this time. Krist Novoselic is caught his attention, and he realized that Kurt was like this really talented person and decided to reach out to him and start to like kind of collaborate with him. And eventually they formed kind of a group, and in 1987 they played their first gig at a house party, which is that's pretty cool. So later in 1987, Kurt and Chris formed the band Nirvana. Have you heard of them? Oh yeah. So Kurt described Nirvana as freedom from pain, suffering, and the external world, which seems really fitting. I hope that Kurt is experiencing Nirvana right now, which would be the only right thing, right? That's what he wanted this whole time. He suffered from like chronic pain and illness, and I think that's why he originally got into drugs and alcohol, was just to escape that. And I hope that he's in Nirvana right now. So, hi, Kurt. So the label Sub Pop signed them, and then they came out with their first single, Love Buzz, in 1988. I'm sorry, yes, 1988, and then in 1989 they came out with their first album, Bleach, which is now very famous. But they were just kind of starting out. They started to gain traction, and then they started to become this front band for the grunge movement that was gaining popularity in Seattle, which again, Kurt became this like revolutionary spokesperson for the outcast, and he never wanted that. Anyways, so David Grohl, I love David Grohl, joined in 1990, and then Nirvana released Nevermind, which was their most popular album in 1991. This album also featured Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is arguably the most famous song by Nirvana. And raise of hands, does anyone know like how Smells Like Teen Spirit got its name? If you don't, I'm going to tell you. So Kurt, his friend Kathleen Hanna, who was the lead singer for the band Bikini, I was going to say Bikini Bottom, but no, it's Bikini Kill. Sorry. I think Kurt would have loved SpongeBob, so don't even come after me. Kathleen Hanna from Bikini Kill. Okay, so they were friends, right? And then in a hotel one night, Kathleen wrote Kurt Smells Like Teen Spirit on the wall of their hotel room. And Kurt's girlfriend at the time wore Teen Spirit, which is a deodorant, if you don't know. So Kurt saw this message on the wall, and he's thinking it's this like amazing catchphrase, and he has no idea what Teen Spirit is. And so he's like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing phrase, I'm gonna name a song after it. And then that's where Smells Like Teen Spirit comes from. Isn't that, it's awesome. I used to use Teen Spirit, so Maybe I guess I smell like teen spirit too, so I think everyone does. Everyone did at some point. Anyways, so we're kind of going in order here, but we're going to step back a little bit. So in 1991, that's when they released Nevermind and their big studio album. But in 1990 is when Kurt actually met Courtney Love. Courtney Love is maybe appropriate timing. Courtney Love is the lead singer to the band Hole, which was also like a grunge band in Seattle at the time. So they officially meet in 1990, but it was said that Kurt didn't really like her, or like didn't really notice her, or like he was one of those guys that didn't understand that you were flirting with them. So Courtney had to like pursue him, she said later. Like she had to like show up and make sure that he saw her and understood that she was pursuing him. And so in 1991, late 1991, they officially got together and started dating. And then Courtney actually got pregnant. And then in 1992, February, they were married. And so they went to Hawaii, got married in Hawaii, and in Kurt-like fashion. So Courtney, there's this picture of them, right? And they're oceans behind them. It's very beautiful. And Courtney is kind of like, ooh, and holding flowers. And she's wearing this like pretty lace satin dress. And then Kurt is literally wearing like green pajamas. And it's just a very strange picture, like thinking about, this is your wedding picture, but I digress. It's fine. If that's what you're into, people have like Star Wars weddings. That's cool. Like, to each his own. It's fine. SpongeBob weddings. Sweet, I mean, we're in Vegas. Like, there's a ton of anything you can think of weddings here. Oh, I saw the dispensary had weddings. You could go get high, get married at the dispensary. Not sponsored, not promoting, but just saying. There's all sorts of types for people. So do what you want. Anyways, so they get married in February 1992, and then Courtney was already pregnant. In August 1992, she gives birth to Frances Bean, which, side note, I saw that Frances Bean just got married to none other than Tony Hawk's son. Whoa. Tony Hawk's son? I don't know his name, but that's cool. Like, she's living her best life, and I mean, considering where she came from, that's... Anyways, I say that because Courtney admitted that she had actually done heroin while she was pregnant with Frances Bean. And she later took it back and blah, blah, blah. But Frances Bean was immediately taken away when she was born. And it's like so sad. And it was a big legal battle for them to get her back. And they eventually did get her back. But that's saying something. If you're willing to do that while you're pregnant with your child, okay, you're obviously struggling with something. But anyways, Frances Bean is doing great now, and she's in her 30s, and she's 30, thriving, and what's the phrase? 30, flirty, and thriving. So we love you, Frances Bean. Hope you're doing good. Maybe you're watching this video, I don't know. But anyways, so yeah, so Frances Bean gets taken away. They eventually get her back. So fast forward a little bit, a few years. Frances Bean is 2, so 1994. In March, Kurt and Courtney, I think, are touring, and they're in Europe. They're in Rome, and Kurt gets sick again. Like I said, he had chronic illnesses, and he had bronchitis and was being treated for bronchitis and laryngitis. And so he's in Rome being treated. And then all of a sudden, Courtney finds him unresponsive in the hotel room, and he had overdosed. And so this to Courtney, she says that this was his first suicide attempt. Later, Kurt said that no, he wasn't suicidal, but Courtney swears that this was his first attempt. So he overdosed on champagne and Rohypnol, or roofies. So the thing is, Courtney was on the same thing. So it's weird to me that they're both doing this at the same time, and Kurt overdoses and Courtney doesn't. So it's just a little strange. That's all I'm saying. Maybe it's Courtney's way of kind of setting the table. I don't know. But it's just a little weird. So later in March, it was said, well, not said, it was confirmed that Kurt was, he hired a lawyer to draw up a will that actually excluded Courtney from the will as a benefactor. That's huge. So he supposedly has a suicide attempt, and then later he's like, no, I need to drop this will and exclude my wife as a benefactor in the case of my death. Unfortunately, so the will was drawn up, and that was confirmed by his lawyer, but it was never signed by Kurt. He died before he could sign it, which, red flag, right? Also, Courtney and Kurt signed a prenup. Courtney made Kurt sign a prenup before they got married. Everyone thought that Courtney was going to be the more famous person out of this couple, and I guess they just didn't realize who Kurt was, and Kurt blew up, and I think Courtney was like, oops, shouldn't have done that. And so Courtney was asking her lawyer if she could have the prenup voided. So that's kind of weird too, right? So later in March, this is a real busy March. So first, Kurt attempts suicide. And then second, Kurt hires a lawyer to exclude Courtney from the will. And then Courtney asks if the prenup can be voided. Then in March, Courtney calls the police and says Kurt is locked in a room with a gun, and she's afraid that he's going to hurt himself. So before we get into this too, I just want to say Kurt was an outdoorsy person. He had a big gun collection, and I am friends with a lot of people that have guns. It doesn't mean that you're gonna hurt someone or hurt yourself, right? So he had a lot of guns. He also had a lot of archery supplies. He had an archery range at his other place. He really liked hunting. There was all sorts of outdoorsy stuff that he liked. So it wasn't unusual for Kurt to have guns in the house or guns in certain rooms or whatever. So I just wanted to note that. Anyways, so she calls the police. They come over, and he's basically like, no, I'm not suicidal. I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm just trying to get away from Courtney. So this was her, again, maybe setting it up where, Kurt kind of looks a little nutso, and she stages an intervention. So after this incident, she calls all of Kurt's friends or her friends or whoever. I don't know who was in attendance, but they stage this intervention, and Kurt reluctantly agrees to go to rehab. And so Kurt goes to rehab at the Exodus Recovery Center, which is in LA. So he hops a plane to LA, goes to this recovery center. So he's there for 2 days. Just 2 days. He's sitting down, maybe playing canasta or poker or chess. I don't know. He's sitting down, and he says, hey, I'm going to go take a smoke. He goes outside. They never see him again. He hops a fence, takes a plane back to Seattle, and he just goes home without telling anyone. So that's awesome. You do Kurt, just curtain around, just hops a fence, willy-nilly, and just hops a plane. I'm out of here, guys. I'm done. No, we need to finish our game. No, it doesn't matter. So he goes back to Seattle. So Courtney finds out. Courtney finds that he left Exodus. Isn't that redundant? Left Exodus. Anyways, leaves Exodus. No one knows where he's at. So she hires a PI. Tom Grant. So she originally hired Tom Grant because her credit card was stolen, and she wanted to find out who it was. But it turned into Tom actually just trying to find Kurt. So anyways, just wanted to mention that. Also too, like, Tom says he was like immediately suspicious of Courtney because she was just acting really strange and there was a lot of weird things going on. And also too, Courtney is really smart, and so she's kind of playing this like smoke and mirror game, and it's really Tom's trying to figure out like what's going on. He's trying to find Kurt. Like, he's like, oh, I thought your credit card was stolen, but no, I'm trying to find your husband now. And anyways, so we'll get into it. So April 5th, so this is what, a month later. Well, a month later from that, like, very eventful March. So April 5th, Kurt is back in Seattle, and he's at this Seattle house that they own, him and Courtney together. And she's not there, so just FYI. He contacts his friend Dylan Carlson, who is also in this grunge scene, and they've been friends for a long time. And he contacts him and says, hey, I'm back in town. Because of the intervention, they took all my guns away, and I have trespassers on my property. Would you be willing to go get me a shotgun and so I can protect myself? And so Dylan Carlson's like, yeah, of course I can do that. So he goes down, gets Kurt a shotgun, and later he says that Kurt was not suicidal. He would not have gotten this gun for Kurt if he was acting weird or suicidal at all. So, and like I said before, like, it wasn't unusual for Kurt to have a gun collection. So not a big deal. So Dylan gets him this shotgun and brings it to Kurt. Now we know that this is actually the day that Kurt dies, but he doesn't get discovered until a few days later. So that's April 5th. April 6th, Courtney calls Tom Grant, the PI, and Dylan Carlson to see if they could go over to the Seattle house and check for Kurt and check for this secret compartment that they had where they usually keep guns or shotguns or whatever. She made it a note to tell them that she couldn't do it herself because she had been arrested. So she was hospitalized and arrested. I'm not sure what the case is there, but she was accounted for during that time, so she couldn't do it herself. Also, she was having her friend Michael DeWitt, or Callie, they would call him, sit at the Seattle house just in case Kurt showed up. But for some reason, Michael couldn't go over there. It had to be Tom and Dylan, which is kind of... So anyways, so they go over there, and it's dark out. So Kurt was eventually found deceased in the greenhouse, which is kind of like upstairs above the garage or something. And Tom said later it was so dark that he didn't notice the greenhouse. He didn't know that space was up there. And so they go to this house. They're searching the house. Michael's not there. They don't find Kurt. But what they do find... Oh, and they don't find a shotgun or anything. They check this like secret compartment, and there's no shotgun in there. Where is it? Supposedly it's upstairs with Kurt. But anyways, they do find this weird note on the stairs of all places. Just very obviously like sitting there. So if anyone were to check that house, they would have seen it. And this note is from Michael. By the way, Michael is Courtney's ex-boyfriend. Michael to Kurt. And the note says something to the effect of, Kurt, how dare you? How did you get in here without me noticing? You know, you hurt Courtney, all this stuff. And so basically it's like over-explaining to Tom and Dylan that somehow, so Michael was out and somehow Kurt got into that Seattle house. And so that's telling them Kurt is here, but they can't see Kurt, or they didn't find Kurt. And so I think it was kind of supposed to lead them to Kurt, and it never did, which, well, Courtney's got to try another way. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. Eventually he is found. So they find this note, weird, but they leave, and they don't see anything else. 2 days later, April 8th. Courtney calls an electrician very urgently and says, hey, I really need security cameras put specifically in the greenhouse of my house. Can you please go over there and install them? And unfortunately, this poor electrician finds Kurt's body on the floor of the greenhouse April 8th. And once the medical examiner gets there, they do declare him dead, unfortunately. And that is the day that Kurt Cobain is pronounced dead. So now that we've gone through the timeline of like what happened, I really want to kind of get into the details as far as like the botched investigation, like Courtney, Michael, all these supposedly accomplices and what happened, Tom Grant, Rosemary Carroll, Courtney's lawyer, there's all these people involved. So let's get into the details, and then I'm going to let you guys kind of decide what you think. I know what I think, and I think I've made it clear, but let's get into that part. Okay, first, let's talk about the forensic inconsistencies. So the first part is the gun. So I don't know if you guys have seen this thing, but it's a huge freaking gun. It's a big shotgun. It's about 50 inches long. It just seems really unlikely and like physically impossible for someone to commit suicide with this gun, especially the way that Kurt did it. So Kurt was found that he had a self-inflicted gunshot wound through his mouth, and there was I don't know if there was no exit wound, but there was a lot of carnage, I guess. So Kurt was 5'10". Gun is 50 inches long, right? You would have to, not to be like, gross, but like you would have to like gag on this thing to like put it in your mouth and then pull the trigger on it. It seems very unlikely that someone would be able to do that, especially with how much heroin Kurt had in his system. Also, I know what you're thinking, like, oh, he must have like sat down and like pulled it with his toes or something. No, he had sneakers on, so there was no way that he could pull it with his toes. And then it seemed like there was no fingerprints. It didn't seem like there was no fingerprints on this gun. There was only smudges, and that doesn't make sense. In every case of suicide, there's always clear fingerprints on the gun because that's the last thing they touch. Kurt doesn't have the option to wipe down his fingerprints from that gun. He's dead. So there's no fingerprints. Also, Kurt, like I said, Kurt had enough heroin in his system, like 3 times the lethal amount of heroin in his system. That's enough to kill a baby elephant, guys. There's been studies done where scientists are trying to figure this out, obviously, because if Kurt was able to do this, he would have been like a miracle of science. And they're saying, why did he have this much heroin in his system and then be able to pull the trigger, right? So they have done studies where they're observing other heroin addicts, and the amount they take is around the same amount as Kurt, right? And they don't even have time to pull the needle out of their arm. That's how much heroin is in their system, and they're incapacitated. They can't do anything. And so Kurt supposedly shot up that much heroin and then took the needle out of his arm, put it back in the box, and then put it in a drawer because it wasn't found out, guys. It was found put away. He was able to put his stuff away, then somehow get this gun in his mouth and pull the trigger. Like, he was this miracle walking around, if that's the case. That's crazy to me, guys. And there was no fingerprints? Like, what? Also, too, the shotgun shell was found on the opposite side of his body. So if he were to aim it towards himself, right, the shotgun shell, I think, should have been going to the right. But it was actually found on the left-hand side. And so what that says is somebody was holding it, pointing it at him, and shot it. But the police are saying, oh no, it's because of the kickback. But like I said, there was no carnage. There was no kickback. This was a 20 gauge shotgun. It's not that much of a kickback. So what kickback are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. There's more, but those are the big ones to me, for the physical forensic inconsistencies, that all of that seems crazy. So let's now talk about the botched investigation. It wasn't good. So later the chief of police said that he admitted that it was like lazy and sloppy and wasn't done well. Kurt's case was immediately labeled as suicide. They labeled it as suicide before they even got the toxicology report back, which is highly unusual. Also, one of the lead detectives on the case was later resigned or got fired because he was crooked. There's a lot of other stuff like that. There was some of the guys on the case, this was their first case, the medical examiner or the coroner or whatever you want to call them. It was their first case, just a lot of this is such a high profile case. Why are you screwing up this bad? It's so bad. Also too, some of the photos from the the suicide scene weren't developed until 21 years later. 21 years! Was it just backed up at the photo 1 hour place? I don't understand. 21 years. So, and another thing too that I found was Kurt's credit card was actually used up until he was found. So Kurt died, according to the examiner, died on April 5th. His credit card was used up until the 8th. Did anyone investigate that? Did anyone look into that? No one looked into that. And it's interesting that Courtney originally hired her PI because her credit card was stolen. Wonder who's using that card. Oh well, I guess we're not going to look into it. That's fine. Okay, next we have to talk about the suicide note. So, if you've seen it, if you haven't, you should look it up. It's very clearly two different tones and two different handwritings. So Kurt, being the artist that he had a ton of notebooks all around. He would write down song lyrics, write down his thoughts. He would journal all the time. And so it wasn't uncommon for him to just ramble like this and create song lyrics and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it was dark. Look at his art. It's super dark. So the beginning of the suicide note is all about the music and Nirvana and possibly breaking up. It's this end theme, right? And David Grohl actually confirmed that Nirvana was breaking up at the time. So this makes sense. It's all about his fans and the music and it coming to end and all that kind of stuff. And then that's the first half. And then the second half is a slightly different handwriting, and it's a completely different tone. That's when it turns into a suicide note. It talks about all that stuff. It also talks about Courtney. And, just read it. Anyways, so the handwriting is similar to Kurt's, but you can tell that it's different. Rosemary Carroll is Courtney's lawyer, and she said that she had found, so Courtney had accidentally left a bag at her house or something. She had found one of Courtney's bags, and inside the bag there were sheets of paper, and on these sheets of paper there are handwriting samples, and it looks like someone is trying to copy a certain type of handwriting, and it looks a lot like the suicide note found at the scene. found at the scene. And they actually had handwriting experts look at this, and now I don't think it's like an exact science, but they've had them look at this, and they said there's a lot of consistencies between these handwriting samples found in Courtney's bag and the suicide note, which is really interesting. Another thing I wanted to mention, Courtney was kind of she vision boarded before like vision boards were a thing. She would write down like mantras or like things she wanted to do, and they would happen. So they're like, get famous, you know, and then she was like famous. Rosemary Carroll said that she found a note that said get arrested that Courtney had written. And remember when Courtney had asked Tom Grant, the PI, and Dylan Carlson to go over to the Seattle house, she said that she couldn't do it herself, but she had been gotten arrested. So that's like some magic. Like, I wish I could vision board like Courtney does, because it seems like everything she does, she writes down, comes true. Right? So anyways, it's all very suspicious. If you haven't looked at the pictures of the suicide note, please go do that, because it is really interesting. The tones change and the handwritings change, and the fact that that wasn't investigated further by the police force. Seattle, what are you doing? Anyways, I digress. Let's talk about the private investigator next, Tom Grant. So Tom Grant, the private investigator. So I said this before, Courtney hired him originally to investigate her stolen credit card, which, okay. But it eventually turned into this search for Kurt. And Tom was immediately suspicious of Courtney. A lot of the things were just really strange. And throughout this case, he kept suspecting Courtney. Obviously, he wasn't on this case very long. And so after Kurt died, he put in his own money and time to investigate this case, which is really awesome. And he created this website called CobainCase.com. So go check it out. It has the writing samples that Rosemary Carroll gave to him, so you can go check those out, see what they look like. And so, yeah, he was immediately suspected Courtney, and he still advocates that this suicide was staged. So he's still kind of out there, and I don't know if he's in the press or something, but like he's an ex-police officer. He has decades of murder investigation experience, and he suspects Courtney. So I don't know, that's pretty valid, I think. And then another thing I wanted to note was when he started all of this, when he started campaigning for, I'm doing a lot of these, sorry. Campaigning, that Courtney had basically done it, right? Or like, this is very suspicious, right? You know, if someone was doing that to you, if someone was accusing you of killing your husband, and what would you do? Like, would you say, no, I didn't kill my husband? Or what I would do is like, okay, like, I'm gonna sue you. Like, you're getting sued, sorry. So what would you do, right? What are you expecting Courtney to do? Courtney, instead of suing him, instead of like going on the press and saying, no, I didn't do it, and like denying it, what does she do? She offers Tom Grant more work. Hey, you're accusing me of murder. Here's more stuff to do. I think it's a case of keep your friends close, enemies closer, maybe? It's very strange. Like I said, Courtney is smart. She knows what's up. Anyways, so Tom Grant, yeah, he has that website, Cobain Case. Go check it out. Has a lot of good stuff on there. But yeah, like, what do? You just offer him more work? I don't. Okay, Courtney. Let's get into the next part. We've had enough of that part. The motive, if there was one, right? The motive. Let's get into it. Okay. Say it wasn't a suicide, and it was suspicious or homicide, murder. who has the most to gain from Kurt's death? So remember, Kurt and Courtney obviously weren't happy. Kurt had hired a lawyer to exclude Courtney as a benefactor from his will. And then Courtney had asked if she could avoid the prenup that she signed. If Kurt had divorced Courtney, then Kurt would have ended up with everything. But in the event of Kurt's death, Courtney ends up with everything. And that's exactly what happened. Not the surviving members of Nirvana. Courtney gets everything. The Kurt's image, Kurt's songs, all of that. I don't know if she probably doesn't have his art. I think the ex-girlfriend has it, but still. Make sure if you buy a print of Kurt's art that stuff doesn't go to Courtney. I'm just saying. So just to put it in perspective too, like how much money that is, Kurt eventually surpassed Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, and John Lennon for, the highest grossing musical artist. Deceased, I'm assuming. Higher than Michael Jackson? Really? Oh, maybe we should do him next, guys. Michael Jackson's on the list. Anyways, Courtney gets all of that, guys. All of it. I wonder if Frances Bean gets any. Wonder if she takes care of Frances Bean. I hope she does. But doesn't that piss you off? She gets everything. If she did it. So it should piss you off if she did it. But if she didn't, and somehow this is all just Courtney's horrible, horrible bad luck. Okay. But do you really think that? I don't know. Okay. Let's talk about the alibi for Courtney. So I briefly mentioned that Courtney had written, Rosemary Carroll found that note, get arrested, in Courtney's bag. And, she's vision boarding. She's making it happen. And Courtney had gotten arrested. And so she called Tom Grant and Dylan Carlson to go check for Kurt at the house. And I think what she was hoping was that they would find Kurt's body. And so she would be able to say, I wasn't there, I was arrested, sorry. But they didn't find him. So later, Courtney had to think of something else, and she hired an electrician to go install, some cameras, and there he was, found in the greenhouse. And so Courtney then could say, obviously I wasn't there because the electrician found him. And one thing that I find something else suspicious is, where's Michael DeWitt's alibi? Because Michael DeWitt had written that really strange note to Kurt that they had found saying, oh, I wasn't in the house when you came in. But Michael wrote that note to Kurt. So he's his own alibi. So I don't know. These are the days before security cameras and all that stuff. Smart home stuff. So I guess we'll never know. Did anyone look into that? Police? Did you guys look into Michael DeWitt? Probably not. Probably not. So let's now talk about some maybe accomplices and then some related cases too. So after Kurt's death, so this is very suspicious. After Kurt's death, another musician, Aldous, I'm going to say Aldous, came out and said that Courtney had offered him $50,000 to kill Kurt. And I think at first he thought it was a joke, but then he obviously said no. And then after Kurt's death, he's like, wait a second, she asked me to do this. And so he came out and said, hey, she asked me, such and such a time ago. And later in 1996, so 2 years later after Kurt's death, he was mysteriously killed. He was found on the train tracks, sleeping or drunk or something, and he was hit by a train. People are dying. People are dying. And did anyone look into this? Police. Please. Seattle police, what are you doing? Look into it. Oh, another thing too is he took a polygraph test. Now, and he passed. Now, I know what we say about polygraph tests, but he passed. I mean, did anyone look where is he taking this polygraph test? Did someone do they have like a local I'm just going to go to our local polygrapher. Get my polygraph done. Did anyone look into that? Police? Anyone? Please? Anyone? Nope, he's dead now. I wonder if him and Kurt are talking up in Nirvana right now. I'm just saying, hey, I'll take a load of this. Anyways. Let's talk about another death related to this case, and I think it has a lot to do with it. I don't know about you guys. I don't know your opinion, but let me know. Kristen Path. So I think I'm saying that right, Path. Kristen Path. She was in Courtney Love's band Hole. So her and Kurt were said to have been close, and Courtney was actually pretty jealous of this and actually threatened Kristen publicly. And so after Kurt's death, Kristen quit and she went home to live in Minnesota. And after a few weeks, she came back. She got clean. She got clean and back home. She came back to like say goodbye to her friends, get the rest of her stuff. And the day she was supposed to leave, she was found in a bathroom dead from an overdose. Courtney threatened her publicly. And it was only until she came back. She was sober. She was good and sober, guys. And she comes back, says bye to her friends. Did Courtney find out she was back? And she just staged something else? Death is following Courtney everywhere. Does Courtney just have really bad luck, guys? Or is it something else? I don't know, guys. She has all of Kurt's stuff. She has all the rights. She's living large off of that. All right, guys. I know this was really heavy. Let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously, there's a lot of literature and research out there pointing to not suicide. So like the CobainCase.com by Tom Grant. And then there's also a petition out, change.org. To reopen Kurt's case. So if you are interested in that too, change.org. I think they're asking for 150,000 signatures. It has like 86,000 already. So go check that out if that's something you're interested in. Also, we talked a lot about suicide today. If you are in that space right now, or you're getting there, or, like postpartum, all that stuff, like depression, just know that you're not alone. You are loved. Please check out some of the links below that I'm going to link down in the description. You're loved. I love you. God loves you. Nirvana loves you. Please go check that out if you need it. One last thing. So, I hope you enjoyed watching me paint Kurt Cobain. And this is the end piece. Now I'm gonna sign it live on air, but if you want your own copy of this, I am selling prints on my website, HonollyArtworks.com. Honolly is my middle name, so that's why it's called that. So go check out my website. There's this print and there's a lot of other prints. Some from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, not sponsored. If you want to go check that out. I'm going to try to get some of Jimmy. There's a lot of other ones that I've done. So go check it out if you want it. So I'm going to sign it on the back. All right, so